Good evening. Welcome again to another exciting, wonderful edition of So Into Bourbon. Once again, we are on location tonight from an undisclosed location in the Kentuckiana area. And that's all you're going to get.
The Bourbon Library.
Yes. I'm Glenn.
I'm Charlie.
Charlie, what are we doing tonight?
We're talking about the Weller.
The Weller.
Glenn, is it my understanding that you recently took a visit to the historic Stitzel-Weller distillery in Louisville,
You
Kentucky?
would have the correct understanding. Yes, I did. And what is so interesting about that place is it was kind of the birthplace of a lot of different brands that we all know and love today that are very popular.
Would one of those brands be the Wellers?
One of those brands would be Weller. So this bottle that we have tonight is the Weller 12 year. W.O. Weller 12.
Yay!
I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yeah, of course. And
You've heard of it.
Yeah, you've heard of it. And this is a Buffalo Trace product.
This is a Buffalo Trace product, and there's a whole story that we're going to get into.
We're going to get
about that.
We're going to get into stories.
Right.
We're going to get into stories. So
we are going to get into stories.
Before Glenn gets into stories, the purpose for our episode tonight is to talk about how it is impossible to remove the history from the product that we have now.
Absolutely. And who would want to remove it?
No, I'm not saying, oh, wipe the slate clean. I am just saying that a lot of the hype, whether earned, deserved, or not, comes from a bygone era.
Absolutely. So, and let's just talk about this particular bottle real quick.
Okay.
The Weller 12. So, it's named after William LaRue Weller, which most people who are into whiskey and bourbon know that name.
It's kind of a big name.
Do you know who he was? Do you know the history behind him? So, yes.
I'm going to make it pop while you're talking.
Make it pop. It's a pop.
It's a screw top.
Okay, let me get back to, and I'm gonna, if I refer to my notes, please forgive me because
there's a lot of history
there's
here,
a lot.
People who can remember this.
So William LaRue Weller was a famous distiller. He has perhaps most famously known as the person who hired Julian Van Winkle.
Would that be Pappy Van Winkle?
That would be Pappy, later known as Pappy.
These are big names.
Yes, big names. So Van Winkle began his career working for Weller, and Weller passed in 1899. So after Weller passed, Pappy Van Winkle went on to continue distilling.
Doing Pappy Van Winkle type things.
Pappy Van Winkle type things. His company was A.P.H. Stitzel.
That's a mouthful.
Yes.
Glenn, do we know the mash bill on this particular product?
We do not know the mash bill on this particular product.
We do know that it is a wheated bourbon.
We do know that it's a wheated bourbon, and that leads me to what the second
important thing.
Most important thing about W.O. Weller is he basically introduced wheat as the secondary grain in the mash bill.
And do you know why he did that?
I don't know why he did that.
I will tell you.
I figured
so,
you would.
People who like rye love that spiciness, that big, bold flavor, that spicy rye. And people that don't.
Right.
So Weller said, well, I don't want all corn because then it's corny, and I don't want the rye. What's a secondary grain that I can do along with my corn and my malted barley? He said, how about wheat? And now you have a wheat and mash bill.
Which is genius because it smooths it out, it sweetens it.
Softens the flavor and has that unique profile. Do I like wheated mash bills?
Charlie, I think if anyone out there has watched more than one of our episodes, you probably know that Charlie's not a huge fan of wheated whiskeys.
I don't.
With the exception of a few.
Weller 12 usually being one of those.
Yes.
Should we nose this, maybe?
I believe we shall.
Let's take a look at this. Weller 12. Weller 12, what's retail on this particular bottle?
I believe right around $50.
And you just walked into your local CVS and purchased this, right?
Oh yeah, every day.
No.
Every day.
Yeah, very hard to find, incredibly difficult to find. Age stated, Buffalo Trace, Weller. Yeah, very hard to find.
This is not super dark. Oh, by the way, 90 proof. I don't know if we said that yet.
They know. If they're watching, they know. Really interesting kind of high clean to the glass.
Yeah.
You seeing that? Like very oily. It's interesting.
It looks like it's going to be very viscous. Our favorite word. Viscous.
It's good nose. Floral.
Just beautiful nose.
Just big floral notes.
Floral and
a little bit of
fruit.
And I get a little bit of spiciness to it, which is really unusual. Yeah, fruit, floral.
I'm not getting a whole lot of spice.
I got a little spiciness in my nose.
Definite floral and fruit.
Yeah, very nice. It smells sweet. Cheers.
Cheers.
Glenn, ask me one of the only weeded bourbons that I really enjoy.
Charlie.
Yes.
What is one of the only weeded bourbons that you really enjoy?
Weller 12.
Yes.
See how we did that? High level of professionalism here. I like the Weller 12. And I have a theory of why. I think that its age and being in that barrel mellows out that weeded funk that I don't like. And this is a really good bottle.
Yeah, I agree. You can. You okay there? Did you get any on you? I mean, you notice the wheat. You can taste it. It's got that sweetness, but it is really balanced out, and it doesn't overwhelm the palate. It doesn't overwhelm the nose,
and it has that nice oaky finish, that kind of dark chocolate, that rich oak. It's a really nice pour, and it is really difficult to separate the bottle from the hype and everything that comes with that. It is a shame that it's not more readily available because it is a very, very good bottle of bourbon.
Absolutely, and this really, everything's mid-palate.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Which is interesting to me.
Yeah, not much on the front, and it just kind of sits there, and it's like, hey, and then it dissipates kind of quickly.
Yeah.
But it leaves you, I kind of like that because it leaves you wanting more. Like I set my
and that's exactly what we need, is something that leaves us wanting more, right?
Kind of, you know what? I'm just gonna reach back and have one more drink. Thought I was done with it, but the finish said otherwise.
Yeah. So. It's very interesting.
So Glenn,
and we like interesting, don't we?
We do like interesting. It's a good bottle.
It is a good bottle.
Yeah. So. Is this something that obviously we've talked? This is Buffalo Trace now. What happened to the Weller at the Stitzel-Weller?
What happened to Stitzel-Weller?
Yeah, what happened?
Distillery?
Yeah, what happened? Why isn't the Weller made at the Stitzel-Weller?
Okay, that's a long history, and I'm going to have to refer to my notes.
Absolutely,
here, so I don't mess anything up.
Give me this.
Oh, he's taking.
I'm taking it.
Why
We've got other things to drink.
Okay. Well, so let's go back a little bit. Okay. After Mr. Weller passes away, and Mr. Van Winkle continues on. So eventually, the companies kind of work together through Prohibition, and then after Prohibition, Mr. Van Winkle started the Stitzel-Weller Distillery, 5 miles from downtown Louisville, on Derby Day in 1935 was when they opened.
History.
So let's just kind of quickly run down the
give
history.
us the broad strokes.
Stitzel-Weller opens Derby Day 1935. Some of the brands that they had then was Weller, Old Fitzgerald,
kind of important,
Rebel Yell, Cabin Still, and others. I know when I was there a few weeks ago, I noticed they had a bottle of Old Elk in their showcase, and that was a Stitzel-Weller brand as well.
I believe they were the original sourcer of if you wanted to just do a label or a brand, you'd go to Stitzel-Weller and slap a label on it.
They did a lot of that. They did. And did you know? Here's another fact.
Oh, I love Did You Knows.
Mr. Van Winkle sold whiskey as private label to Macy's and I believe Marriott.
Oh, that's...
Yes, I have my notes here. Macy's and Marriott.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Imagine having one of those.
Those are collector's items.
You don't, as opposed to the other Pappy Van Winkle.
So
okay,
fast forward. 1972. Stitzel-Weller's purchased by Norton Simon and renamed the Old Fitzgerald Distillery, which you will see remnants of that if you visit Stitzel-Weller, because there's a huge smokestack and it says Old Fitzgerald all the way down. And I have a bunch of pictures that I'm going to add here when we edit this, so you can take a look at.
Follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, take a look at those pictures, and yeah, they'll be on Instagram and Facebook and all that. So, 1972, fast forward to 1984, purchased by Distillers Company, which now, well, became known as United Distillers. Big conglomerate.
This is in the bourbon glut,
Yes.
where there's lots of bourbon, there's nobody drinking it.
Exactly. So, 84 to 92.
Rough times.
Yes, distilling stopped at Stitzel-Weller, and it was moved to Bernheim. Another name.
Another name.
Another name.
history.
Another history, yes.
Yeah. Where are we at right now? Me, an idiot. The Stitzel-Weller Distillery is in Louisville, Kentucky. It's right there. I could drive there. Who owns it?
Diageo.
They're kind of big.
They're big.
They're the biggest. Yeah.
So, yes, it was purchased in 2015.
2015.
By Diageo.
Diageo buys it. So Diageo, huge company, owns a ton of stuff.
Yes.
They're like, hey, we'll just buy that. What are they selling? What is available at Stitzel-Weller now?
So, initially, when they opened it, when Diageo purchased it, and they opened Stitzel-Weller back up, Bullet Bourbon. The Bullet experience was located where Stitzel-Weller is now.
Bullet.
Until 2019, when Bullet built a nice new place out in Shelbyville,
Right.
Kentucky, and moved everything out there. Now,
Now, what's there now?
present day, Blade and Bow,
Okay. All right.
I.W. Harper,
Oh,
which
wow.
is bottled at Stitzel-Weller.
That is also correct.
It is sourced from various Kentucky distillery
Places.
or
Sourced from
distilleries,
Yeah.
bottled at Stitzel-Weller, and Orphan Barrel. Have you heard of Orphan Barrel?
Yeah. So Orphan Barrel, interesting story. Orphan Barrel's whole existence is their brand is they go out and they find barrels. Literally orphans. Like, hey, what do you got in the back?
Yeah.
Like they're those people.
Usually really old barrels.
Really old barrels, and they source it from anywhere they can get. They have some really cool stuff that's out there. High dollar, top tier, but very unique offerings.
Yes.
So, interesting.
So one more thing on that note.
Okay.
Also located at Stitzel-Weller today, and it's a great place to visit. I highly recommend it. Upstairs, they have what's called the Garden and Gun Club,
Oh.
which is a bar. I think they serve some light Southern fare, and you can have some really nice pours of different orphan,
Well, look at that.
different orphan barrels.
And you can do it in the garden with a gun, which is awesome.
There's really no guns and really no garden, but that's what it's called.
Bring your own gun.
But it is a great place. I highly recommend if you check out Stitzel-Weller, go upstairs, have a couple pours,
Okay.
make a mean old fashioned.
Cool. Can I borrow this?
Yes, you can.
This is why Glenn did the research on this one. Because it's impossible.
He took my crutch.
It's impossible to separate the history and the hype from the bottles. And I even found myself doing it when I said, what's there now? And he said, oh, in 2015, Bullet Bourbon went in Stitzel-Weller.
Yes.
Bullet's fine. I don't have any problem with Bullet. I've drank a couple Bullets. They're fine. They're great. They're okay. But I was amazed, like when he said it, it was like he stepped in something, or I stepped in something. And it's because I thought, oh, that glorious home to so much history was the home of Bullitt. Mm-hmm. Not that there's anything wrong with Bullitt, but it just didn't fit the mold. And then I was like, well, I'm doing what I said that people shouldn't do, right, which is buy into the history of what was then as opposed to what is now.
Yeah, and something I want to touch on really quickly before
touch on it.
Yeah,
and I'm pouring. Yep.
Is make it pop. That was an odd pop.
It's a big old cork.
So when production shut down at Stitzel-Weller in '92, they had so many barrels of whiskey that they couldn't move it all. So they started selling off a lot of those old barrels, a lot of the old Stitzel-Weller stuff, to various other brands. And you could buy a barrel of Stitzel-Weller whiskey for $200. Some of those barrels that were sold for $200 became some of the most expensive, the most highly respected whiskeys in the world. Just shut your mouth. Past years.
Let's all have a moment of silence for those $200 barrels.
Yes, a moment of silence.
Yeah.
But another important thing that happened in that time is a lot of those brands that used to be owned by Stitzel-Weller, like Old Fitzgerald and Weller and
Cabin Still.
Yes, were sold off to Sazerac. Purchased most of them.
Yep. Luxco, a bunch of others. Yeah. And those still exist today.
Yeah. And the timing worked out really well for Heaven Hill because remember the huge Heaven Hill fire? Well, they needed somewhere else to go, and the Bernheim distillery was available. And so that really helped Heaven Hill be able to kind of
so much history.
Not miss a beat there.
Yeah, so much history and so much even recent history.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Glenn, what are we drinking here?
We are drinking I.W. Harper Cabernet Cask. Reserve.
It's a 90 proof. Glenn,
it's a 90 proof.
You got this at the gift shop, right?
Got it at the gift shop. It was $50 range.
Okay. Two things. Yes. Number one, beautiful bottle.
It is beautiful.
It's incredibly elegant. It's nice and square, and it's beautiful.
Just like you.
Yeah, square.
Nice and square.
Beautiful and square. Yeah, look at that.
See? All right. It's got a really classy look to it.
It does.
A 50s or 60s era.
Very classy.
That, you'd see somebody smoking a pipe. Oh, I have some trivia for you.
Okay.
Bill Murray drank this I.W. Harper, not the Cabernet Cask, in a very popular movie.
Lost in Translation?
You got it.
Yeah!
He was in Japan because
he was filming
for 30 years.
Yeah.
This I.W. Harper brand was only sold in Japan.
Yep. And it just came back in 2015.
Absolutely.
Color. Very light.
It is very light.
Very
lighter
very
than
light.
I would expect to be a finished whiskey. This is not age stated, but it is known that it was aged 4 years before it was put in a Cabernet cask. Okay. So we don't know how long it was in the Cabernet.
And we're drinking this.
Why it's not.
We're drinking this because this is what's at Stitzel-Weller now.
Yes.
So you can still go and tour Stitzel-Weller and go into Pappy Van Winkle's office and have a part of that history and then buy something and be like, I got this at Stitzel-Weller.
Yes, you can. You can also buy, depending if you're lucky or not, I.W. Harper makes a 15-year.
Yeah, but they proof that down to like 86 proof or something. Really surprising nose.
That's a nice nose.
It's rich. Like I'm having a heart, like a crazy.
I'm picking up some raisins.
It's a really. I thought this would not have much nose. It's 90 proof.
Yeah. I like it.
Really
it's a
interesting
nice nose. Yeah. Raisins, cherries.
get chocolate brownies.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well,
All right,
let's
cheers.
taste. Cheers
To Stitzel-Weller.
to Stitzel-Weller. You know what? It's young. It tastes young, but it's not bad. It's pretty. It's sweeter than I expected. I expected it to be a lot drier on the finish.
Drink it again.
Yeah, you talk.
No, I like this. And I have made no, I am vocal that I like finished whiskeys and finished bourbons. I think it adds a uniqueness to what can often be a very stale flavor. I like this.
I do too.
I like this a lot.
It's nice.
It's now $50. Okay. Is that the new normal? I don't know. But I kind of, yeah, I mean, it kind of is, but I like it. I like this a lot. It's got that, like you said, it's obvious the bourbon's not super old. You know, it's probably 4 years and then it's like, okay, finish it.
But it's pretty straightforward. It's, you don't get, you know, for a 4-year-old bourbon, I would expect to get a lot of corn on it. And I don't get that. Maybe that's because it's balanced out by the Cabernet cask. Yeah.
It has a really unique finish. You know, it's kind of, it's almost like drinking two things. It's like drinking a younger bourbon, a 4-year-old bourbon, and then the finish is like, whoa, hello. And you get some of those, that kind of dry, red, tannic, and the finish lingers for a long time.
It's got a pretty powerful finish.
And it's that kind of dry red wine finish.
But it's not, to me, it doesn't finish near as dry as a lot of wine finished bourbons that I've had. Some of them, they just really, they hit you and then it's just boom, they just dry up.
The wine is overpowering. Yeah, you know what? That's a nice little offering. I mean, the presentation doesn't hurt either.
Correct.
So
that's, I really, I enjoy it.
That's a surprise. You know, somewhat unique. What have we learned?
Well, Charlie, we've learned a lot tonight.
So much.
We've learned a little bit about the history of Stitzel-Weller. We've learned who
William
LaRue Weller. That is hard to say.
Say it 5 times. William LaRue Weller is.
We learned about Pappy Van Winkle and how he worked for Mr. Weller, and that's how he got his start. We learned how. Do you want me to keep going?
No. So all of those things, the only thing that I keep thinking of is if you take away William LaRue Weller and Pappy, is there the hype around just another 15 or 20-year-old age-stated $250 bottle?
I don't know, Charlie. I mean, think about how many brands would not exist if it were not for those two men. And
that's the point. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's not worth it and this, that, and other, but bourbon is one of those unique things that it's impossible to separate. Pappy Van Winkle and Stitzel-Weller has nothing to do with Weller and its history. It's so far removed from it. It's generations removed. It's at a different distillery that has nothing to do with what created it. But it is still the absolute most popular brand and bottles in bourbon. And it's unbelievable. I can't think of any other product that goes back and harkens to that where it's so removed and it's still so popular.
Kind of like Michael Jordan and Jordan shoes.
It's a good analogy. Yeah, it's a good analogy. I haven't played for 20 years and still makes...
It's been more than 20, I think.
Don't remind me. And still makes a couple $1 billion from that. So,
yeah.
Hey, bourbon.
It's good.
It is good. That's a catchphrase, not to be used without the trademark. Bourbon good.
You know, the longer we sit here, the more I like this.
It's not bad.
No, it isn't. It really isn't.
Again, the point of the episode, the whole point is, number 1, stop chasing Pappies. And then number 2, go to the Stitzel-Weller distillery and be a part of that history. Now, you can't drink the history anymore, but you can still go and you can still be there and walk where they walked and see all that, if that appeals to you, and go to Pappy's office and then buy you a decent little bottle from the gift shop.
Absolutely.
And that's what matters. Make your own history, man.
And I'll be honest, I was kind of hesitant to buy that bottle.
But I made you do it.
He did. He told me, nope, go ahead and buy it. And I'm glad I did, because
we'll do an episode.
And
yeah.
this is pretty readily available, and I believe it will be for
kind of like that.
a while.
So
I'm getting a lot of cherry on this. Chocolate covered cherries, which is one of my favorite.
It's not bad.
Notes.
You know what you should do? You should like and subscribe and hit the little bell at the top so you get notifications.
You should. Make us happy.
What else should they do?
They should also go to Facebook, So Into Bourbon, join our group, because that's what cool people do.
Cool people do that. Mm-hmm. Follow us on Instagram, So Into Bourbon.
And TikTok, Whiskey Realtor on TikTok.
As always.
If you are so inclined.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this trip back to the history of Stitzel-Weller. And as always,
keep your bunghole tight.
Good night, everyone.
You just fucked it up.
Sorry. No, I couldn't talk in the intro. I'll just sit here and...
No. This time I'll...
Nope. I'll sit here and go myself.
Don't
fuck. Hello.
I'm a little nervous.
Just let me see him. I think we can abandon all hope at... Are we... The Weller episode.
The Weller's...
Take
Weller.
96.
Weller.
Intro.
Weller.
Action.
Weller.
Weller. Weller.